Did you know that over 65% of franchise brands struggle to maintain consistent local marketing performance as they scale? Well, that's what we're going to look at today.
Welcome to Fordify Live with your host, Ford Saeks.
Today's guest is a trailblazer in franchising and marketing innovation. As a certified franchise executive, she founded the nation's first senior placement franchise and built it into a national brand before successfully exiting. Now she's bringing her franchisor experience full circle as the founder and CEO of Sweet Influencers, and we're going to learn more about that today. So, Angela, welcome to Fordify Live.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, you know, I know we were just talking in the green room that we met at IFA. We were at a round table together and you were there and you've got this new thing going. But just share with our listeners who may not know who you are a little bit about your journey into franchising and then lead into what you're doing now with Sweet Influencers.
Sure. Yeah, there's three parts to my history. First, started out as a registered nurse working in the hospital, doing bedside nursing, and frustration led to inspiration, and that's what prompted me to find and create Assisted Living Locators, the first senior living placement franchise. And that essentially was matchmaking. I created a company utilizing tools, matchmaking seniors with providers. And fast forward, after 20 years plus of running that organization, I sold to private equity, stayed on for a couple of years just to ensure that smoothness and transition, and took that matchmaking skill set into Sweet Influencers. So I continue on with the matchmaking, which I feel like is my absolute superpower. And prior to launching that, I had two big situations that really came into my life that helped shape the direction. And certainly ChatGPT, I think that that the AI tool, I leaned into that so early on. But in January, so that was November of 2022, January of 2023, while flying on a plane, and I've got a whole thing of people, impressive people that I've met on planes, amazing people,
Right.
but I happened to meet a gentleman who was an influencer. His name is Andrew Steele. And Andrew Steele said, "What do you do?" And I said, I'm in senior living placement. And he's like, "Boy, I have no idea what that is." And I said, "What do you do?" And he said, "I'm an influencer." And I said, "Well, Martha Stewart was the original OG of influencing. Right. Tell me, describe and briefly what that means." And he works with 6 of the 8 largest RV manufacturers. That's his skill set, his superpower. And on that course of the flight from Phoenix to Miami, we really talked about that. And it was at that very moment that inspiration fireworks were just bursting, of how I would take that into the pain points that franchisees experience. And my background and I was so heavily involved in assisted living locators and franchise development and in the operations, but my true love, it was really that unit economics, but my natural was franchise development as well. And so I'd go to all the conferences. I'd go to at least 10 a year. And I elbowed with everybody, all the different franchises, and I loved hearing their stories and their pain points. And so I cultivated this entire business based on, a couple of those things. And I met a gentleman named Chris Johnson who was on Shark Tank.
Yep.
And he promoted his business. It was Rapid Ramen, and he subsequently had 17 patents. But I hired him in as a consultant. He had a business that promoted an influencer marketing business that, I got the whole back end of the contracting, the ins and outs of influencing, how to be a rock star in that, and to accelerate those learnings, because I quickly learned in franchising, there's people, if somebody's already done it before you, leverage that.
Right. Don't reinvent the wheel, right?
No, so those are those key things that strategically, and I was supposed to stay another year with the Riverside company, running the company, but I'd set it up for such success and we were hitting every metric that we needed to, that I just said, hey, you guys are in great hands. I am so comfortable and confident that, my exit, but I can hardly, my excitement, I can hardly contain it to launch. And it wouldn't be fair to stay in this business while my mind is, planning out
Right.
the next few years.
Well, for those of you listening right now, we're live right now on Facebook and LinkedIn and YouTube and a few other places. And the audio from this episode becomes the Business Growth Show podcast. So whatever platform you're on, like it, share it, subscribe, all the normal stuff. And for you listening to the podcast, again, it's Angela Olia. She's the founder and CEO of sweetinfluencers.ai. Now, the challenge, I'd like to go into that a little bit more. Now, I get the concept of what you're doing, which first I want to talk about innovation for a second. I've got multiple patents. I've run 17 different companies. I've got products that I guarantee our listeners own. And what I've found is that creativity and innovation come where you connect something you don't know to something you do know through something that's similar. So the fact that you were so successful in assisted living locators, that was your foundation that helps you see things that other people don't see. It's the same thing with me because I've invented products in childcare, automotive, sporting goods, and medical. I now can see things that other people don't see. And they're like, oh, you're so innovative. No, I've just worked my butt off to understand these things. And that's what you've done too. So congratulations to doing that, which brings me to, so who is your ideal client for Sweet Influencers so that the audience can understand the matchmaking process that you're offering?
When I look at who's an actual client, and what I'm really focused on, the biggest part of our focus is built by franchisors for franchisors, because we understand the guardrails that need to be up for protection of brands, compliance, all of those things that go into that. And so when we've built this out, we've got 15 different service areas, and underneath those are subcategories. So it can be anything from plumbing to massage to fitness to child, from tutoring to sports. There's really not, with the exception of senior care.
Right. Yeah, you got to have some boundaries somewhere. I get it.
Yeah, but a lot of it before and afters.
Yeah.
Where you can see before and afters, from lighting to roofing. So there's really, service to seniors is probably one of the outliers that I would say really isn't, because that's such a need space.
Yep.
When you need it, you need it.
All right, so let's go a little bit. So obviously, the challenge I have right now, I've been speaking for 34 years. I'm mainly an opening keynote speaker. I spoke for several of the brands from Riverside, so I certainly understand the franchise brand and the model. And what I would say is when AI first really became more popular, it's always been around. Spell check was an AI. It's been around for decades, right? But when it really became more mainstream, when ChatGPT hit the market, and the challenge now for both you and I who provide AI type services is that everybody with a laptop thinks they're an AI expert, right? And so for all you listening right now, we're not saying that either one of us are the ultimate AI experts, but what we are solutions providers. So what I do is I help bridge the gap from where people are to where they want to go, help them, find their ideal customers, help them increase their average transaction. If it's a franchise brand, system-wide sales, yada, yada. So everybody gets that. What I like about what you're doing, if I understand it correctly, and so I'm going to explain it, but then you need to no, Ford, that's wrong. So okay. What I understand it is, imagine a franchise brand who's trying to increase their influence and attract customers. The challenge for the marketplace is it's harder than ever. The cost to acquire a new customer has gone up. Traditional methods of, and you can use this in your marketing if you're not already, Angela. But the cost to acquire a new customer has gone up. Google no longer is sending you direct traffic. The cost per pay-per-click has gone up. So organizations and brands are looking for innovative ways to reach their customers. And what I believe Sweet Influencers is doing is they're filling that very important gap with third-party authority. So brands can go through you to find an influencer that then they can use to leverage their content to reach their local customers and drive sales. Is that kind of the answer?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Well said. And it's using a multitude. If somebody can get a brand ambassador that at the end of it, but in the beginning, we're working with nano and micro, and it can be macro. And we're talking about just every day, not a big launch. We're talking about you're already up and running. How do I improve my business? A grand opening is something entirely different because you've got specific marketing costs for that. But we work with the nano and the micro, and you look at their number of followers and their conversions, as well as their ability, their cost, and the radius of what they cover. So the smaller the influence, they're going to have up to 10,000.
Right.
They're going to have in a radius, it could be 15 miles of where they're 15, 20 miles. And so you're drilling into that. So we're creating an ROI tool, and that is able to leverage a different mix. And so we're piloting right now. We've got about 13 brands that we're piloting and getting really that mix. And so that brainstorming of one is a tour where you think of bridal showers where they're doing the pedal tours. And another one is a plumbing company that does restoration, and getting in there brainstorming who is their target, how do you get that recurrent revenue, how do you get that authenticity. And so working, and the more that we do in these different silos, the better we're able to get that drilled down. And again, it's working with a multitude of those, a mix of those. So it's not just one, we're working with several, overlapping it, stacking it, measuring with our tools at each little step in the process, and really registering which one is doing the best. Do we boost that? Are we able to whitelist it, meaning that they open up their clientele to you, or their public? And what are you able to also put on your site to use for your additional advertising? So we're handling leaning into what works, and there's going to be things that don't work. It's trial and error in it, but the more we do it, the more our tools will refine and perfect so that they're able to scale it out amongst their franchisees with slight tweaks.
So break it down for layman's purposes. Is the franchisee the one who's hiring you? Is the franchisor using you're a preferred vendor, and then their local franchisees use you? How does the revenue model work? And then my second question, I feel like I'm at a press conference. And my second question is, we'll just ask the first part first. So the first part is, who's paying you, so that our listeners know that if they're at a franchisee, that they might suggest, okay, they don't make the decision, but they should send in something to their franchise advisory council or to their company to say, hey, you should go check this company out. Where does the money flow on the franchise or the ideal customer side?
So I'm gonna go broad and go, and then kind of back out of that or go deeper in it. So the tool that we built, we've got where if you have multiple brands under you, if you've got a platform that you've got oversight over all of the brands, if you're controlling it up there, then we have at the franchisor level that they're able to launch. And then we have an individual franchisee who can do it, as well as a franchisee who's got multiple territories. So we've built out our tool, but our target initially in the pilot, we're working with a combination of both. But I can tell you, what you just described, we actually had somebody who approached us that is with a quick service brand, QSR.
Yep.
Quick service restaurant, and they approached us about doing it. And a quick look at their FDD, they're not permitted to have social media.
Right.
And
yeah, that's what happens.
We quickly circled back to them, and as franchisors, that who we've got that experience, we were able to go back to them and say, you know what, unfortunately, we're not going to be able to work with you. Go to your corporate office, and if they bless this, great. But it's that respect and that knowledge that Gen Pop's not going to have any clue what that's about, and then they'd have to unwind things and So that was a situation where somebody owned multiple brands. They had,
Yep.
over a dozen in a state. So, but we are primarily targeting working with the franchisors so that we can do top-down
That
funnel
makes
and work
sense.
with as many. But we're not going to say no to the franchisees. So we're going to have a self-service model that they can get on and do themselves with vetted influencers. But then we've got the white glove where we're going to take it, run it, and have dedicated specialists working with them to handle end to end.
All right. So for those of you listening, I'm going to break it down a little bit differently. So I'm a keynote speaker, and so I can go direct to the brand, or I have a bureau, and that bureau, I'm listed at multiple bureaus across the country, and those bureaus are basically agents for me. They create the deal, and then I go in and do the speaking, and then they make a percentage on that. Well, it's a similar thing with the influencers. Now, are the influencers that you're going to have in your system? Is it like this? Is it where, okay, let's say I'm a part owner in a franchise brand. It's a small emerging. They've only got 30 units, so I never talk about it because I go speak at conferences and I don't want them to think that I'm trying to prospect the people to sell my own franchise, which I'm not. I'm just a strategic marketing person for this other company. So the point I was getting at though is are you going and finding influencers and having them in inventory, or is it more when you get a brand and now you're going and soliciting to try to find an influencer that'll fit the brand, or kind of both probably?
You know what? It's actually both, because there's the great thing about this is there's so many nano influencers that are just peaking, and they're right in that cusp, and so there's always new people and innovation that's coming out, and so we're always continuing to fill that funnel. But and there's a paradigm shift that will happen as we're out there seeking. We've got out of those 15 brands and then the subcategories, we're specifically seeking in that area of influencers that are going to fall in one of those silos, one of those brackets that we have. But when we get a brand, now we're really drilling in, because it may be something, if it's, I'm going to say pizza, where we're going for the college student, we're going for the mom that, does Pizza Fridays. We want a coach, a little league coach. So our end user is going to be, we want to hit different markets for that. And so we're going to be expanding, and the more that we use, they may be able to cross-reference and work another brand that's not in that same space as well.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to hear a word from our, I'm going to play our sponsor for just a second. I'm going to come back with some other questions. 1 second.
Can't cut through the online chaos? This episode is powered by Ignite Visibility, the nation's expert in ROI-driven digital marketing. We help over 90 leading franchise brands and 2,500 locations outrank competitors and convert more customers. Ready to stand out and grow? Claim your free digital marketing audit at ignitevisibility.com. Ignite your growth.
Okay, we're back with Angela Olia, and we were talking about sweetinfluencers.ai. And so I get the concepts because I'm an entrepreneur, and I in some markets I'm an influencer. What I like about the franchise brand, because I speak to associations, I speak to corporations, I speak to manufacturing, finance, pharmaceutical. I'm in a lot of different worlds. But what I have found is that when I really specialized and went deep in with franchising, they really liked it because I understand the franchise model, being a franchisee and a franchisor, because that's really what you're talking about with sweet influencers in the franchise brand and in the industry, is because there's a lot of nuances to franchising, especially if you're a new franchisee listening to this. You've got your FDD, which is franchise disclosure documents. You've got a franchise advisory council. You've got corporate, whether they're a single unit or a multi-unit, whether they're a private equity group. Like, there's all these different nuances. And because you've lived it and done it, and you grew a very big company and then exited, you already get that knowledge. So that's where I think what you're doing is so amazing. Because typically I just have CEOs on from franchise brands, full disclosure, because that's who hires me. So I get to spend an hour with them on my podcast, or a half an hour. But with this, I knew what you were doing is so interesting that I thought you'd be a perfect fit, because our listeners listeners need what you have. And again, I'm going to go back to the biggest challenge, which is the cost to get a new customer. The old playbook does not work. And so what you're doing, Angela, is you're giving, whether they're a nano, micro, or macro brand, a way to connect authentically with their ideal client, to expand their influence and to actually drive social proof, right? And that's what's so amazing. Now, I'm just curious, hypothetically, because this, and I didn't say this, all of our episodes are for information and educational purposes only. We are not giving you legal advice nor offering to buy or sell any type of business. Now that I've got the disclaimer out of the way, how does the influencer make money? Is it profitable? I mean, is it something where they make money by performance, or is it just a deal and they sign it? And I'm asking as if there's no listeners right now. I'm just curious how that works.
Yeah, no, that is a great question. And so I will start with a nano. So the nano influencer, if we have, say it's, and I'm gonna go to the bachelorette party, or where somebody's birthday party. So it may involve where they get them and the individual, the influencer, and a few of their friends. Maybe they just get a free ride and a gift card for food and beverage. It could be that plus $100 up to $600. So there could be a combination. We have, we worked with a dog groomer, a mobile dog groomer. So the first batch of influencers, they all got their dog washed. Mobile grooming was included. So the range also will be dependent on their number of followers that they have, but it could be involved. If we have the college student, maybe they get 6 pizzas. And they're not getting compensated. So we're able to work with a budget and say, in our outreach to the nano influencers, not the micro influencers, they're going to want to get paid. But with the other one, it could be as little as $100. Yep. It could be a trade-off of a service. And their goal is to do this full time. They want to do this full time and perhaps be a brand ambassador for that, where they get paid a monthly fee. And then if their performance for a particular one goes above a certain amount, they get bonused on that. And so we've got a budget, and our outreach to the influencer is, would you do a trade depending on what brand we're representing? Obviously, if we're covering a kitchen cabinet, restoration or that, it's not going to involve, it's not.
They're not going to go do a 70,000 remodel on your kitchen for an influencer video. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, no, but food or services or fun or experiential, it could be a barter, and it could be a hybrid of both.
All right. So with your business experience, and I really appreciate you being on the show today, what do you find shocking that when you got into this new venture that maybe surprised you? And you can go anywhere you want with the question. I'm just like, because you did assisted living locators and you've been doing this. What is something that now that you're into this for a while and you're growing it, what is something that shocked you, or that maybe you go, well, I didn't recognize that was going to happen?
I can't say, I definitely thought I was going to do, I knew I was building this for franchisors, and specifically their franchisees, to really, it's such a struggle for franchisees getting started. And so to really help out that local franchisee was really, because, and I would say in most businesses, and I can relate this to my prior business, assisted living locators, if I had a client that had a lot of money, they were the easiest clients to work with, find them the best in class place for mom or dad. The hardest ones were the ones that had very little money, where we were really struggling to find that. And so recognizing we're starting with the hardest. So with my team, I've shared that with them, that we're starting out with a local offices and getting it dialed. And once we get this dialed in with them, the rest is gravy. Yeah. But people, whether or not it's such a hard concept for new franchisees to part with the money or recognize what is that, how do I spend money to get clients? And so I knew that going in, because I had franchisees myself, and convincing them, not just to spend wildly, like put your name on a grocery basket or some random, where you'd never get your money back. But for this, it's really helping them understand and educating them on influence. Because I would say everybody that we've approached definitely has piqued their interest.
Yeah, I
But
think it's yeah, go ahead.
understanding how do you get it to, how do you translate that to getting clients and walking them through, because it's early innovators. We're the only influencer marketing company in the IFA.
That's great.
We just
And that's
participated at IFPG. We're the
yeah,
only ones in their portfolio. So
I
we're
think that's
first
great.
mover advantage.
Well, I tell you, as an entrepreneur myself, like I said, and most of my listeners know my backgrounds in what I've invented and what I've done and growing companies up and everything. And what I've found is that speed to market, it's not always the best company. It's the most visible company, unfortunately. Sometimes that's a good thing. It's a bad thing. And the whole game, like I've said a few times on this episode, has changed. And so organizations, franchisees, and businesses are looking for different ways to reach their target market. And what's really great about the influencer market, for those of you that might be like halfway into this episode going, okay, what's an influencer? All right, we're just talking about somebody who has a following, they have a tribe. And there's only 3 ways to get traffic in any business. You create it, which means you have content. You borrow it, which means you're borrowing the influence of others, or you buy it. Well, this is the borrowing the influence of others. If a brand pilots with a local influencer and that influencer has a following, that brings social proof and credibility to that business and then ultimately drives business. I know, the other model is, in every advertising, because I run a digital marketing agency too. So on top of Prime Concepts Group, I run not the ad that I ran for this episode. That's actually a different supplier in IFA who came to me and said, "You're an influencer. Can I pay you to be on your episodes?" And that's where the ad came from. It's the same thing, right? So they invested with me, and I have a contract with Joe Mohe, who's the president of the brand development over there for them. And we made a deal. And I said, okay, I'll add you to my episodes and you can see what I do. But going back to the metrics, people always ask me when it comes to pay-per-click, for example, how much should you spend on pay-per-click? And what I would tell it doesn't matter what you're spending money on, whether it's an influencer program or pay-per-click or a trade show or, your billboard on a bus bench, right? You have to ask yourself, what's it cost you to reach your leads? What's your conversion rate? How many people picked up the phone or called or, engaged with you? How many customers did you get? What's the profit on the first sale? And what's the long-term value? And the value of influencer marketing is it doesn't happen just when that video or that piece of content goes out, because that content has legs. So imagine someone who wants to work with a plumber or work with a bridal company, and they've gotten the quote, and the quote might be 10 or 20% higher than the competitors. So what do? They go to Google and they type in that company's name. Well, up comes those influencers immediately. That's social proof and credibility. So it shortens the sales cycle. It improves conversion. It reduces the cost to acquire a new customer. It does all these value-added things. Now, and for everybody listening, Angela and I did not discuss this. So I'm telling you what I think. She'll tell you what she thinks. But I can see a real value in it, especially being first to market, especially being in franchising, because it's like anything else. I was the first in the National Speakers Association to really lead into AI way before it was popular. And they said, "Oh, you're rebranding." I said, "No, I'm not rebranding, but how can I talk about business success and not talk about the disruption and the impact of what AI is going to do?" And that's how you and I met at a roundtable a couple years ago at IFA. And so it's the same thing now. And I really applaud you. Congratulations on what you're doing. I think it's amazing. I can only see it growing, because it's in a market that, when I say a market, it's in an application that I can only see growing. And it's so surprising to me. I'll turn it back over to you in a second. I'm still talking to groups. I just keynoted Houndstown, which is a franchise brand in dog care. I keynoted Touching Hearts for Health, which is in home care. I'm sure you know Touching Hearts at Home, which is in senior care. And I was surprised of the several hundred people at both those conferences. 50% of the room hadn't even used ChatGPT. They'd never had it downloaded on their phone. And I was blown away. I'm like, are you living under a rock? And they're like, well, that's technology. And I'm like, it's not, you're not going to put the genie back in the bottle. It's not going away. Like this is here. And I always tell people the greatest risk with AI it's not adopting it too soon. It's waiting too long and falling behind. Now, I have a real good question about avatar marketing, but any thoughts on that before I go to the next question?
You know, we've played around. I'm not going to lie. We've definitely played around with like before and afters of rooms, of house lighting and things like that in our local advertising. It's not where we're at with actually using it for our clients, because we really want to lean into that local person. But as we're doing attracting influencers for specific brands, and one of the ones that you mentioned has reached out to us, and we think they will be a great fit for what we're doing. So we have definitely played around and we've used it in attracting of influencers to us, but
Right.
not client to clients and their products. But where we've got that technology and it's amazing. As a matter of fact, I sent it out to 5 different people when we did our first one, and half of them, 2 of them already knew up front, like they were expecting something,
Right.
and they were already guessing, if you're showing me this, and the other one's like, yeah, that's a great ad. What? And I was like, completely AI, the image, the speaker, everything was complete AI. And they were like, oh my God, that's scary, and it can be. So again, when you're leading into authenticity for our client facing, we are working with real influencers, but if it's a product or something on the other side of it, we definitely have it in our toolkit.
Yeah, I just had a strategic partnership call with HeyGen, because I do these AI master classes every month, and I get about 1,000 people who register, 500 people show up, and I usually get 20 to 30 leads from it. So it's been a good lead magnet. Now, the reason I'm sharing these numbers for our listeners is whatever marketing you should do, you should have your numbers. So I don't mind, full disclosure. Here's what I'm doing. So I was working with HeyGen because there's Synthesia and there's other ones. There's other tools out there, especially now with the new video tools. And I really think that the scariest thing going forward, because I've been on the cutting edge of this stuff, some of these AI avatars are so good that I didn't know it was an avatar. Like they're not I've used AI for me, and I've done it on my master classes, and it's like, you can obviously tell it's like a talking photo, and it's really cheesy. But I'm telling you, within 6 months or less, it's going to be harder to know what's real and what's not. And I think the real value here is, because you're working with real people and real influencers, I think you're going to see a pendulum swing to, okay, everybody's trying to digitize and do all the, to do it at scale. But I don't think that's really going to last. And that's why my book, I talk about having the human touch, is because I speak on these groups and like, oh, we're going to lose all these people and they're not going to need people anymore. And I'm like, no. The real currency going forward is going to be that human connection, the ability to communicate, your soft skills, your networking skills, your ability to influence and be real on video, on screen, on demand. I think that's where it's going to go, because for me, and I tell this story in my master classes, I hate the automated attendance. Whenever you call a company and it says, press 1 for this, press 2 for this, or press 3 for sales.
Oh, yeah.
Nobody likes that. Now, I will tell you an AI experience that I had, and I want to get your feedback. So I was closing my pool. I have a pool, and it got cold and it froze. And my wife was like, "You need to close the pool." And so I'm like, okay. So I was on Sunday, and I went to Leslie's pool, and of course they were closed. So in my car back from Leslie's, I opened up ChatGPT, and I had a voice conversation. And I said, "Hey, Leslie's is closed. I need to find antifreeze, that's chemically the right type of antifreeze for a pool, so my pipes don't freeze." And it said, "Have you called Lowe's yet?" And I said, "No, I'll call Lowe's." So I get off the phone, I call Lowe's, and I kid you not, it was the first AI experience from customer experience that actually worked. I called Lowe's, they answered the phone, and they said, "What department? Do you mind?" And I thought, I just kept saying, agent, like everybody always does, I'm just like, give me a freaking agent, right? And then it said, "Look, just ask me the question. If I don't answer it, I'll get you an agent." I said, "All right, fair enough." I said, "I have a pool. It's 16 by 32. It's 5 foot deep. I need to figure out how much antifreeze I need for it, and I need to find out how to buy it." They said, "Absolutely. Come on in the store. It's on aisle 17, bay 5. It's $2.39 a gallon. Is there anything else I can help you with?" And I was like, Holy crap. Like that, you know how and I nothing against Lowe's. I got to be so careful when I bring up company names because, they do book me and I don't want to bash a company that might hire me. But most of the time in Lowe's, you get somebody who doesn't know anything. They're like, hey, can I help you? And then they don't know, they can't actually help. And if you ask them something, they read the bottle. Like, I could have done that. Like, I don't need that. So the story is, that's a long road to a tiny house, Angela, sorry. But I actually found AI in that aspect to answer a quick question valuable. But I think when it comes to brand marketing, I think the brands that are really going to stand out are the ones that don't go too heavy into the artificial influencers, that they really lean into the authentic. That's the word I was looking for. Yeah, the authenticity of it. Thank you. That they lean into the authenticity, because I think that's where I think that's going to really elevate them. Well, they can maybe do it at scale with an avatar. I really think that the authenticity piece is where the real sweet spot is.
No, I agree. I'm an avid TikTok follower and on social media and that. And one of the things that you can watch a really cool video, but then you're like, holy crap, that was AI. And the comments in there are like, stop it with the AI, because people don't like being tricked.
Right.
And so if you know something is absolutely robotic and it's that's part of the sell, that's one thing. But when they're tricked and they didn't know that, that's a darker side of it, that you're right. And that's why on that side of it, we're not going, it is actual, authentic, real people. But going back to what you said, I'm seeing more and more of those phone service with haircuts. Can you go with anybody? What's your time? And so some of the agents have really been perfected in that. And, but it also goes to competency. Do you prefer the human touch? And I
Right.
think of bank automation. You're calling a bank because there's a problem. And, you're going through push 1, push 2, push 5, and that's not truly an agent on that side. But I had an experience yesterday with someone that, with a huge hotel chain, and it was incompetence. So if your choice is incompetence or, this fabulous AI tool, hands down, if it can handle it and do it in such a succinct, timely and competent way, great. I will take that all day long, versus somebody who's incompetent, that my frustration or the buttons, so we just want to get our stuff handled and, have the ability to talk to a real human, a competent human who can take care of us if needed.
Yeah, I think it's really important for brands to map out their customer journey and to not lose the human experience. I mean, I keep speaking about it over and over again. Centown, I had Tim, the CEO of Centown, on my show last year, and I became a customer because I'm like, I didn't know what Centown did, and I interviewed him, like, and I've got a Labradoodle. I'm like, and I just had her in yesterday, and of course I always do the upsell. She gets a bath and her ears and her toes and all the other. Okay, a little bit too much information, but I remember they use AI to help remind me of the appointment, to get like that part's helpful, right? But if I want to just find out about a brand and what they can do, I think the human touch is really going to be amazing. What do you see on the horizon? Like, what's next for Sweet Influencers and AI in the franchising world as we wrap up the show? Anything you want our listeners to know?
It is going to be something that, we're starting off with the brands that driving, for the consumer side of it. But certainly in franchise development, which has been, probably one of my biggest strengths in assisted living locators, really driving that for over 20 years, continued growth exceeding year over year. So adding that component into it, it may be sooner rather than later on that side of it. And organically, if we've got a brand that's doing really well with our influencer marketing, their unit economics are going to go up, which is going to help with their validation. That people seeing that the influencer is organically, again, going to help with Fran Dev, but specifically driving into that Fran Dev is going to be a market that we feel like we can tackle. So our growth trajectory, we are, like I said, onboarding 15 brands. And our 15 brands that we're doing, we're waiving our service fee for those 15 brands because they're knowing that you've got to commit to a minimum of 4 months so that we can continue dialing it and showing, what's working, what's not working, and really getting that persona down for them. But we plan on going global. There's no reason why we can't go global with this tool. So we're building out with, metrics. Is it miles or is it kilometers in our tools? So we're really thinking big and how we want to conduct this. And again, with from brand platforms down to the franchisee, the individual franchisee.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. It's Angela Olia, the founder and CEO of Sweet Influencers. Thanks so much, Angela.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for tuning in to Fordify Live. Make sure to like, comment, and share this episode on your favorite social media platform. And don't forget to subscribe to the Business Growth Show podcast, available wherever you get your podcast streaming fix. We air weekly at 11 a.m. Central Time. So until next week, keep pushing the boundaries and never stop growing.